name is Jeremy Ransford. I worked at the gas company for about 19 years. I started out in the field as a laborer. I went from a laborer. My background is welding, so I was a welder on gas pipelines, crew lead. About the only job I didn't do at the gas company is regulators. And that's not because I didn't set them in my weld shop, it's just because I didn't pass. They wouldn't let me pass the OQs to set them out in the field because they didn't want me doing that job too for some reason. So I got a very diverse background. I'm usually not one of those guys that stand up there and give you his resume, but I always do it in front of a training crowd. I have found the guys that stand there and say, I can do this, this, and this, is usually the guys that can't do a whole lot. So that's why I try not to do that. This training, we're going to go over a little bit of who Vectren is, where we're located at. We're going to go over state law. We're going to go over civil penalties, what can actually happen when a gas line strike happens, what you should do, and how to prevent it. We'll blow up a house. I'll show you some different stuff. This is real interactive, right? So if you don't like something I say something. We can talk about it. I'm going to give you the law version of what I'll have to do, and then I'll give you the common sense version if they don't line up, right? Because sometimes the law is pretty gray, and they wrote it that way for interpretation. So, anybody got any questions before we get started? This is just about what I said there, what we're going to go over. That's our footprint, right? About 3 years ago, we got bought out from Centerpoint, so now we're Vectren as Centerpoint Company. If you get a bill from us, it's still going to say Vectren on it, all that stuff. We're going to keep the name for a little bit longer. But we were just based in Indiana and Ohio right there. So when we got bought out, you can see how much more we increased. So now we're the third largest utility in the nation. We're headquartered down in Houston for natural gas, but we're still headquartered down in Evansville for the electric side of it. And we've been dispatched to Louisiana twice this year. So that there is telling you that you can get on a national piping system, the NPMS, and you can see all the transmission lines running anywhere, right? But that does not include distribution lines, which is what you guys dig around all the time, right? Transmission lines, you will have a representative from Vectren on site with you, because we will call you whenever you call in to locate. The locator notifies us of that. We will not let you dig on any of our transmission lines without us being there. Those are the high pressure lines, the ones that you won't even know you hit because you won't be here anymore. Those are 750 pounds, 18 inches, anywhere from 8 to 18 inches in diameter. So some characteristics of natural gas. It's lighter than air, it's odorless, and it displaces oxygen, right? So if you cut it, it's going to rise up and dissipate into the atmosphere, or it's going to rise up and pool in the ceiling or the attic of a home if there's a leak in a home. Carbon monoxide is a poisonous gas. It's produced whenever natural gas is not burned cleanly. That's why all your appliances and everything's been into the outside. We always recommend that you have a CO2 or carbon monoxide and a natural gas leak detector in your home if you utilize natural gas. Propane, a little bit, it's just almost the exact opposite. It's heavier than air, it's colorless and tasteless, odorless. The big one there is the propane will pool in low-lying areas. So if you're ever excavating in a rural area and you see a propane tank and you cut a line, it's not going to rise up and dissipate. It's going to pool in that low-lying ditch. You'll walk through that cloud, it'll be a white vapor cloud. Don't walk through that, right? Because you're just kicking it up with your boots, and then it's just a bad situation. So if you ever see those tanks, that's the two biggest characteristic differences between natural gas and propane. Also, it expands quickly. Those little propane tanks that you got on your gas grill, 50 to 1. So it'll expand 50 times that tank if there's a leak on it. Leak recognition, right? Sight, sound, and smell. Everybody everybody in here has probably smelled natural gas before, right? It stinks. It's like rotten eggs. We add that stink to it. There's a truck that comes out of Texas. I call it the stink truck. Boy, if you've ever smelled natural gas, you need to smell it in that liquid when it's in a liquid form and not dissipated into a vapor. It is some strong stuff. So we added a specific amount to it so you can smell it even at the smallest leak. Responding to a leak, do leave the area immediately on foot. Do not use electric switches, telephones, including cell phones, anything that could spark. Your cell phone is an ignition source, right? Fire departments, first responders, they all wear those radios. And if you start looking at this stuff, whenever you see them out there, if the radio is green, that means it's intrinsically safe. A lot of areas don't have that. Your volunteers, your smaller towns, pretty much everywhere in Hamilton County, you'll see those first responders and firemen will have those intrinsically safe radios, but the smaller towns don't, just because of the cost, because each radio is about $1,500. So they just don't have it in the budget for that kind of thing. From a safe distance, you're to call 911 and veteran. Never assume someone else has reported the leak. Keep others away from the area. Abandon any equipment being used in the area. So if you're on an excavator, digging out a basement, you clip a gas line. If you can shut it off safely as you're exiting, then that's what we recommend you to do, right? But if you forget to shut that piece of equipment off and you struck a gas line that's up in there, don't ever go back in there and shut it off. It's best just to let it run, right? Equipment can be replaced, lives can't, right? Leave the repairs to the trained technicians. We'll go over that in a little bit. Keep others away from the area. You actually become the first responder by law until 911 gets there. So there's 3 phone calls that you got to make every time a gas line strike is hit. The first one is 911, second one is 811, and the third one is the operator of the pipeline. And then you actually are supposed to get people away from that dangerous situation until 911 shows up, and then they'll take over. Don't try to repair a natural gas leak yourself. I'm going to say that about 3 more times during this presentation. It's called the self-repair. The state of Indiana will actually implement up to a $10,000 fine if you attempt to do a self-repair or attempt to stop the gas flow in any way. Don't attempt to stop the leak. Don't ever bend over, pinch off, squeeze off a gas line. The reason behind that is static electricity is built up, right? With the gas flow going down the line, dust, dirt, particles are in the gas line, and you can create a spark right then. So whenever you bend that, you've seen guys do it. I used to do it back in the day. You cut a gas line, you jump down in there, and you kink it off. You stop the leak. You feel all warm and fuzzy because it's not blowing at you anymore. We used to give these away, right? I used to make these in my weld shop. This will get you in a heap of trouble if you utilize these now, and you're not OQ qualified, trained through the government to utilize them. You're supposed to be grounded, have a wrist rheostat on it, stab it in the ground. Like I said, once you kink that line off and that spark happens, you're going to jump. So then if you pull back just a little bit, you're going to have 60 pounds of gas lit, blowing on you, right? It's going to burn you. You'll be lucky if it don't kill your ass. So it's not worth it. They don't even want you to attempt to do it. You cut it, you get away from it. That's the bottom line. Don't use electric phones. Don't operate pipeline valves. Don't attempt to put out a natural gas fire. This one, this isn't really following your realm, but we put it in there because guys carry fire extinguishers. So we always say, don't put out the fire. Let 911 decide to do it, or us. There's a lot of benefits to this. This is a bad situation, right? But if you ever put this fire out, the only way you're ever going to put a natural gas fire out is with a dry chemical agent too. You can't put water on it. You got to displace the oxygen. So you take away the heat triangle, you got to take away one of them, and that's your oxygen. So This right here, even though it looks bad, that's a very safe situation, right? You know where the gas is at, it's not hurting anybody, and you can see it. So I've been on a few of these in my career at the gas company. Every one that I've put out has lit back up, right? So if you leave it burning, you know where it's going. Because once you put that out, what have you got then? You didn't stop the leak, you just got a cloud of gas coming out now. So at least you can see it when it's like this, and people will not get near it. So we talk about cross bores, right? We didn't have all the technology back in the 60s and the 50s, even the 70s that we have now with the bore machines. It seems like you can't go anywhere on the street here in Hamilton County without seeing some kind of a fiber project being put in. Everybody wanting 5G, right? We used to just shoot the mole, what we called shooting the mole back in the day, and we wouldn't do a locate on the sewer. So it's not uncommon for you to find a gas line in the sewer. Now we find these, we correct them, but we always tell people if they have a clogged drain or something to reach out to us. Let us see if we've done any work in there. Let's pull our records. Let's do a locate on it. Because the second that you hire a plumber and he comes down through there and road routes the sewer lateral, you can have an issue because now you got 60 pounds blowing in a gas line, or a 60-pound gas line blowing in a gravity-fed sewer. I've done some pretty crazy stuff working for the gas company. The scariest I've ever been is when I had walked into a house and the toilet was bubbling because it had natural gas in it. That leak ended up being 2 blocks away. And don't ask me why it didn't go down any other lateral, right? Path of least resistance, probably roots and everything else was in that system. But we found that. We didn't lose anything, luckily, but that definitely makes you step back and think when you're in that situation and you come across it. And the poor dude that was just roto-rootering the lateral out, he got gas blown back in his face. So
whose fault would that be if you did have a plumber come out and there was a gas line through your septic? Would that be the homeowner's fault?
No.
No, it would be
It's our fault. The way the law reads now, if a utility is encased in a man-made surface, that's an installation problem, right? So again, back in the day, we would just shoot the mole, and you'd level it out, be about 3 foot deep on this side of the road. You put the level on it, and you'd hope to God it wouldn't hit a sand pocket or a rock underneath the road. But what it would do is it would come along and it'd hammer, and it'd hit a rock, and then it'd go up, and then it'd hit the bottom of the asphalt for a little while, and then it would go back down, and then it'd come out the right side on the other side, or the right depth, right? I just had one last night. Reith Riley got into me. It was actually touching the road, in the middle of the road. The road was about 40 feet long. We didn't know it was like that because, you know, you shoot the mole back in the day, you don't know where it's going. Sometimes you never got those things back, right? So whenever we do projects now, we run a sewer cam before, we run a sewer cam after. And then we are not allowed to, per our company standards, we don't do an upgrade to a gas line unless we have a sewer locate. So we find them and we correct them, but I ain't gonna lie to you, there's more of them out there, right? So just we put this in that training for food for thought if you're ever doing that kind of thing. Service lines to meters. They're generally 1/4 pound is what we call low pressure, 6-inch water column, all the way up to 60 pounds. Everything in this county and the surrounding counties, they're generally 60 pounds. Service lines can be from 1/4 inch to 2-inch pipe. Now this is just the line running off the main up to the house. The depth of the line may vary on landscaping and ground cover, right? The number of times guys said that gas line should be deeper than that. There is no standard or no law says how deep my gas line's got to be, right? We have company standards, but there is no law. So if you call in a locate, see the yellow mark, and you're used to going out and taking a foot off of it, taking the hard stuff off, getting down to the moist dirt, right? That's a bad practice. You need to get out of that, right? Because if that gas line's 2 inches deep and you put a tooth in it, I'm not at fault. You're at fault. I'm going to say that a lot Don't give me ammunition to point a finger at you whenever I do my damage investigation. If you follow the law, I'll have to eat it every single time, right? Excess flow valves are installed and are often placed at service lines as a safety precaution. That is this device right here. This is installed on any line greater than 10 pounds. It's a check valve. So if there's a large amount of gas released, that check valve in here will close and you won't hear gas anymore. You might smell it every once in a while. So if you're ever digging and you're like, man, I smell gas, but now I don't, and you're in a new neighborhood, chances are you cut a gas line, you didn't even know it. Give us a call. We'll come out and do an investigation. It's a free call, free charge. We'll either tell you that you're off your rocker or yeah, you got a gas line, right? So, customer-owned pipe and fuel lines, these are never located. This is a private utility that the homeowner is responsible for locating. So if he's got a meter set and then a gas line going back to his grill, his fire pit, his barn, that's up to him to have that utilized. 811 or located. 811 will not locate that. They generally run at a quarter of a pound, maybe greater, depending on the needs. Customers are responsible for the maintenance of that. A little bit of safety. Keep your meter clear of debris. Protect it from snow and ice. Ice will screw this up and get you out of gas this winter whenever it's really cold out. If you don't have any gutters on your house, what I tell guys to do is put a 5-gallon bucket over that. And that'll keep your house warm all winter long, right? Hazards do exist with operating natural gas pipelines. We want you to plan your jobs, design, operate, maintenance, inspection, testing, and supply of pipelines. Damage prevention is a shared responsibility. By working together, we can protect our community. Every time a gas line is struck, it's not just your downtime that you have, it's the first responder that comes out there, puts his life at risk, the crews that come out and do the repair, the kids that are home on their day off from school with their parents. A lot of things go into that scenario. So I just want you to think about that. If you show up and there's no locates and you decide to just go ahead and dig, right? I want you to give me a call. I'll get somebody out there within 30 minutes for you. Because it's cheaper for you to wait for that 30 minutes to get somebody to locate that for you than it is to spend all day waiting for us to repair that gas line so you continue your job, right? This is a scenario, and I'll go into great detail afterwards, but this is a 25-year plus tech that worked for Vector, and I knew this guy. His name was Alan Dalrymple. We'll talk about this afterwards here. See if I can get this to work. Oh, didn't like that button.
On Monday, November 20th, 2006, a cable television technician was using a grounding rod to service a home in Huntington, Indiana. No locate request was made, and the underground utilities were not marked. The technician inadvertently drove the grounding rod through a 1-inch natural gas pipeline running to a home. Gas began escaping from the pipeline, and the technician notified the local gas company. The gas company employee quickly arrived at the scene, but within minutes, the house exploded, killing 2 people, including the responder for the gas company. Brandon Dalrymple is the oldest of 2 sons of the gas company employee who died in the incident.
He was on call, got called to a gas leak, which every time he got called to something like that, we all told him to be careful. And was only there a few minutes before the explosion occurred. It's not been easy. You know, our family's definitely not the same. If the call before you dig service with 811 had been used, my dad would still be here today. I have no doubt about that.
Each year, Brandon honors his father's memory and emphasizes the importance of calling 811 before every digging project at a softball tournament in Huntington. This tragedy could have been avoided with a call to 811. Call 811 before every digging project. It's free, it's simple, and it's the law. Remember, a call to 811 could prevent a call to 911. For more information, go to call811.com. Sponsored by the U.S. Department of Transportation, Pipeline and Hazardous Materials Safety Administration.
So, the big one there is, two people lost their life that day, right? A guy showed up, he did not request to locate, he hit one of my gas lines, a bunch of things went wrong that day. He didn't call 911, he didn't call his office right away and tell him that he hit the gas line. He removed the ground rod that he hit the gas line with, and he didn't knock on the door and say, hey, I hit your gas line, we need to get out, right? So that's a lot. Guys ask me all the time, was there charges filed against this individual? The answer is no, because the way the law was written, that then when this happened, none of those things had to happen, right? This case right here was a major factor in the way the law was written today. So you remember I said you gotta make 3 phone calls? It's because of this case is actually part of it. So you become the first responder, right? You gotta knock on the door and say, hey, I hit your gas line, you need to get away. That includes adjacent properties to it, right? That's an added responsibility to the excavator, but it might have saved 2 lives that day if he'd have done that, right? Just a simple knock on the door and say, hey, get out. Now I've had people come up and say, I ain't doing that. Well, that's on you, right? If you don't want to follow me out when I tell you you're in a dangerous situation, you want to stay in your house, that's on you. So, but you at least got to make that attempt to do that. Now I'm going to show you how a house will blow up and why it'll blow up, right? Everybody's seen that on the news. You know, people trying to collect insurance, they blow up their house and all that stuff, and a big ordeal going on. It is how hard it is to blow something up with natural gas. Natural gas is only flammable in a LEL, and UEL. This is the lower explosive limit and the upper explosive limit. So 4 to 15% gas. If you put more gas in a house, it's not a bigger boom. It won't ignite. Me being a welder, that's how I welded on live gas lines. 100% gas is not flammable. It's when it mixes with oxygen is when it becomes flammable, right? So you get that 4 to 15%. So when you blow through a gas line, then it ignites. I only did that twice too. So we're filling up this structure, right? We're going to take it through the LEL and the UEL. So the old saying, whatever goes up must come down, right? So now we're at 4 or 5%, 6, 7, 8, it's going up. This is ignited, or flammable right now. So once we get it going hotter, so we're at 25% gas in there now. It will not ignite, right? So the problem is when people come home and they smell gas in their house, they start going around and opening up their windows, leaving their doors open. I said that earlier, whatever goes up has to come back down through it, right? So it was a bad situation, but it wasn't flammable. So once you start mixing air in there, and it gets within its parameter, you don't know when it is. See, you thought it was going to ignite whenever I hit the clicker, right? You just don't know when it's going to ignite unless you... Nobody carries a combustible gas indicator around with them, right? We do. That's why you call us, but you can't tell how much gas is in a house just by the smell. Okay, that's what the point is I'm trying to get across to you. We put so much of that stink in there that you smell it before it gets anywhere near the explosive limit, right? That's why we have to put that stink in that gas. So, some of the different gas lines you will see, we've been using this for about 4 years now. It's called high density pipe, right? It's black and it's got a yellow stripe in all 4 quadrants of the pipe, right? If you've been around a little while, you know what pink alkylate is. It is very brittle, very, not malleable. I'm trying to think of another word. You can actually pop it just by digging it up with a shovel, so you gotta be real careful when you're digging around the gas line, because it lays in the ground, it gets brittle, and then you start moving it around with a shovel. Everybody knows what the old yellow pipe, we put this in the 90s to 2018. I was not a big fan of leaving this pipe, because everybody knows yellow is gas, right? Everybody knew pink was gas. But now the electric companies, the water companies, everybody's gone to this high density pipe. The only way you can tell is the yellow marks in all 4 quadrants. Electric line that's in it, it's gonna have red marks, blue water. So time will tell if that yellow mark will be in the pipe in 40, 50 years, right? Because this stuff, anybody that's dug this stuff up, it's almost gray now, it's not pink anymore. So the pigmentation's gone out of that pipe. So that's the different kinds of stuff that you'll see out in the field. Depending on some of the rural areas, there's a strict guidelines of what we can put in the ground now, but back in the day, they just put whatever was in sale at the hardware store that day, right? So you gotta be real careful when you're digging around older, established neighborhoods that are not here. So anytime a gas line is struck, there is a penalty associated with it. Either I'm paying a penalty or you're paying a penalty. All that money goes into a general fund and can only be used for education purposes. So 811 gets its funding by actually you hitting a gas line or me mismarking a gas line. They have to use it for education, which they can do best is educate the masses, right? So you turn on the radio in the summertime, that's when they do their big radio push for 811. You'll hear that. You'll see stuff on the TV, and then the advertisement. That's how they get their other one out there. The 5 steps to safe digging. Plan your project. Call 811 before you dig. Wait the required time amount. This one, just to let you know, that's a big one, right? I use a time calculator, and the 811 timestamps it when a locate called in. So I know if it's 20 days and 2 hours, or if it's been 1 day and 12 hours, right? Like I said, you have to operate within the law just like I do, so don't give me an opportunity to point a finger. Protected locate marks, excavate with care. White lining, that's a hot topic in Indiana. We're not a white lining state yet, but they are trying to get it done, which means they're gonna require excavators to white line their jobs as part of a locate, right? If you do it now, it just helps the locator out and speeds up the process. Because if you call in an entire property and you go out and you white line, then he only has to locate your white line area. All projects, big or small, require a call to 811. It's a free service and it's required by law. Know your state laws, right? Shallow digging is still digging. See how shallow that line is? See how shallow that electric line is? It's still digging, right? Back in the day when I first started, you could dig with a hand tool and didn't need a locator, right? But you can't even dig with a teaspoon anymore without having a locator. Before digging, call 811 at least 2 working days. The tolerance zone is 24 inches on either side of the mark, plus half the diameter of the pipe. So if you're locating, if you're digging on our 20-inch line, we get 24 inches plus 10 inches. A locate ticket only is only good for 20 days. That's another good one. You need to call in your remarks for 15 days out, right? Don't wait till the 20th day. Then by law, you got to wait 2 more days before you can start digging again on the same job. So we got to stay within the law, and it's 20 days is what they came up with. Submit locate request to 811. Allow veteran at least 2 full working days, excluding holidays and weekends. Perform a site review to check signs for unmarked utilities near meters and pedestals. So what that's saying is if you go out there and you don't see any gas marks or electric marks, look around. See if you see an electric pedestal on a house. See if you see a gas meter on the house. You can give me a call, and like I said, I'll get somebody there within 30 minutes to mark that line for you.
Sir,
Yeah.
with a lot of the work that we do, I've actually got our lady in the office calling in as
Mhm.
much as 2 weeks before we show up, and they're still not marked.
I understand that. If you give me a call, I can't keep track of, I think I've got like 190,000 tickets in my area that the guys keep track of. What I do is I give my number out to excavators, and I tell them that, hey, give me a holler. Don't dig until you get paint, right? Because you know there's utility in. You guys dig in new neighborhoods every day. What's the one thing you're gonna come in contact with? Natural gas, because we're sitting right up next to the house. Just give me a chance, right? I say, give me the chance to give you some results and get that located for you. So if you take a break, go to breakfast, come back, it will be located. If
For us,
it's not,
yeah. Most time we're digging literally up against the side of the house.
Mhm.
You know, and we still call them in because we wanna know for sure nothing's there that is unforeseen.
right,
Majority of the time, and I know it's not legal and you shouldn't do it, majority of the
Right.
time you can walk around the house, you see where it's going in, you see where it's coming out. And if everything's on the left side of the house, and you're digging on the right side of the house, still not legal.
yeah. There again, you would give me a finger to point at you, right?
Yeah.
Now, we're gonna go into how dangerous that thinking is, because it's not only illegal to do it, but your employer could actually get in trouble for what you just did. So we'll go into that in a little bit. I wanna hang on to that. I'm not pointing you out or anything, but I just wanna be very
That's why-
honest with
that's
you.
why I asked.
What that can happen with that scenario you just gave me. But to answer your question, I got business cards up here. Keep one in your truck, take a photo of it, keep it in your phone, reach out and give me a call.
Yeah, I was curious because, you know, when I give them 2 weeks and they say give 24 hours or 48
Right.
hours, and now it's been 2 weeks and they still haven't shown up.
They are extremely backlogged, and I'm not gonna lie to you. I say the same thing every day. We are actually in the process of changing locate vendors and going to a one-way locate in only Danville. We do that down south, and we've gotten remarkable results from that.
We actually had a locator show up here in Carmel, it's actually right here in Carmel. He showed up, located half the job, left. We were there digging, and the only reason I knew this is because he told us when we were there digging. He located half the job and left because he had another job he had to go to. Came back 2 days later and we were there digging, we thought everything was fine because it was marked. And he goes, oh, you can't dig, I'm not done, I haven't located the whole property yet.
Okay. Yeah, that's, again, a phone call to me, and I'll set him straight on what he needs to do, right? I got zero sympathy for stuff like that.
Whose
When
fault
goes
would
on.
that be in that case, though, like you thought they were gonna dig?
That's the locators. At the end of the day, they got 2 days to do it, right? But then there's also the safety part of it, of you knowing that it's not done, right? And we can get into that in a little bit. There's a lot of other things that go into that, right? Remember me saying the law is pretty gray? It's pretty clear on this part of it.
What do you do in a scenario when, like, you're backfilling a job and you're backfilling a 20-foot pile that they've walked up and located all the way up the pile and back down the other side as you're, pushing it in?
You want the common sense answer or the law answer?
Law answer.
You're supposed to find the gas line in there. You want the common sense answer? It's below grade level.
Right.
Right? So there's 2 different answers to that. And I'm only gonna use one. If something happens, see, this is all in what ifs, right? If a gas line's struck, then I come out and I say, why didn't you do this, this, and this, right? You can do that digging on the other side of the house, you know it's not legal, all day long until something happens, right? And then you gotta justify it. So, dig with care. 24 inches on each side of the yellow marks. The only legal way to dig up any utility is with a hand tool or hydro vacuum excavation. The days of taking the frost line out and then getting down there and hammering with a shovel looking for it, those are gone, right? utilize vac trucks or, a shovel, and sometimes you can't do it, but you've got to. That's the only way that they'll allow you to do. 24-inch tolerance zone is completely around the facility. So by law, once you expose that utility, you are to hand dig 24 inches all the way around that. And that prevents you from, catching another utility. Because a lot of utilities will, abandon one right next to the one 6, 10, 12 inches away from the live one. Right, so they'll put another one right in there. That 24-inch rule, that will save you a damage. Because I'll give you the gist behind it. If you damage a gas line, you dig down and find a abandoned one, and it's within the 2 foot of the marks, but the live one's 10, 12 inches in the bank, I can't help you at all, right? I go by 2 foot. That's what the law gives me. So I come out and I put a tape measure down on the gas line. If it's within the 24 inches, it's within the 24 inches, right? So, you gotta be real conscious of that 24-inch tolerance zone and making sure you're excavating that all the way around. Always have a spotter while operating equipment. That's actually in the law now. The days of somebody's digging, getting off spotting, jumping back up and digging again, that's illegal, right? You gotta have 2 guys out on a job site. Don't assume the depth of any pipeline. Depth lines can change along a pipeline route. So if you spot it on one end of the lot, and you're thinking you've got 3 foot before you gotta start hand digging over here, that line goes like this in the dirt, right? Not always, but I've seen it. I see a lot of stuff just because I do all the damage investigations. So if it can happen, I've pretty much seen it. Notify veteran if you scrape or gouge a pipe. Don't take shortcuts. So, all damages to an underground natural gas facility, including nicks, scrapes, and dents, must be reported to the facility operator and 811 immediately. If there is a release of product, if gas is released, you must call 911. Must also be contacted. So there's 3, the operator, which is veteran, 811, and 911 is the 3 phone calls you gotta make. Excavators who damage underground facilities may be subject to civil penalties. We'll go over those civil penalties in a second on how that elevates and how much it'll actually cost the company to do that. But what's not in here is the owner of the company. If something sideways goes bad, people lose their lives, the house blows up, they can sue the gas company, but they can also sue Custom Concrete, right? The owners of the company, right? They're not gonna come after you, they're gonna come after the deeper pockets. So they will come after whoever's got the most money, and they're gonna come after Custom Concrete also. So they can sue you in civil or criminal, depending on if you was negligent when you was doing your job. Everybody know what the word negligent means? Digging without locating, not hand exposing, that's negligent. So everything that I'm telling you is also on Indiana811.org. You don't have to take my word for it, you can go read. If you need something to put you to sleep at night, you can read the state law. Those are the phone numbers for veteran. If you want to take your phone out and snap that photo, if you ever need to get a hold of an emergency, if you cut a gas line, the 227-1376. That's USIC's number. If you ever need somebody at USIC, what I recommend you doing is giving me a call. I got a little bit more weight with USIC to get results for you, instead of you just calling and saying, hey, come locate my job, right? And that's the end of it. I thought I had another slide in there showing you the penalties. So every gas line every damage is submitted to the UPAC, the IURC, and then it goes for the UPAC for review. It goes up in $500 increments. I can tell you right now, a veteran pays $5,000 every time they hit a gas line, because we're at the top. We always dig on natural gas, right? We have oops just like anybody else. We do have to report it just like everybody else. Every time we mismark a line, it is also another fine. I say us. My locate vendor mismarks a line. It's a fine associated with that. So not only do I have to pay for the repair costs, I've also got to pay a fine to that. Every time custom concrete hits the line, they have to pay a fine on top. All these fines are on top of the damage repair cost. All these fine money goes into that general fund that I said could only be used for education purposes. It goes up to $5,000. If you do something crazy, like try to squeeze it off, attempt to self-repair, not call anybody, it can go up to $10,000 for each incident. So, like Reese Riley, every time they hit a half-inch service line, they're at $5,000. Every time I hit a half-inch service line, I'm at $5,000. There's new excavators out there. For the first time you hit a gas line, if you follow the law and you have a locate, and you were digging down by hand and you just popped it with a shovel, that's a one-time get-out-of-jail-free card. They say don't do it again. So they've implemented these fines and penalties trying to prevent natural gas from happening, right? I think they ought to do it on electric too, because to be quite honest with you, I think electric will kill you a hell of a lot faster than natural gas will. But I'm kind of immune to natural gas. I've worked around this for so many years, right? But I've also blown teeth off of a backhoe because an electric line wasn't marked. Luckily, nobody was hurt. It was just the backhoe tooth that got blown off of it, and my hearing and eyesight. You guys ever done that? That is some crazy stuff, boy. I don't know how them old boys work on all them high lines like that. I lost my train of thought. What was I talking about? Fines and penalties. An excavator gets a one-time get-out-of-jail-free card, and then it goes up in $500 increments for each time that he hits a gas line after that, up to $5,000. I think last month I went to it. Veteran paid $65,000 that month in fines, right? So that's for the whole state of Indiana. Has anybody got any questions, comments, or concerns?
Why is there no law for how deep gas is? Is there a law for how deep power is?
No. Well, I don't know.
Why would that be a good idea?
I can't give you an answer, right? I just know that in order to change a law now, what do you have to do? You have to go down, you have to legislate, right? That costs a ton of flipping money. And it's not up there on the list of stuff to do. They've covered it, right? What's your responsibility when you go out and excavate? Dig down with a shovel before you ever use a piece of equipment. So they think that they've got it covered in that.
And
They're right.
How far does it take usually above the gas line? Do they put a dirt over it and put tape usually, or?
That's a good question. That depends on what the kind of mood the foreman was in that day, right? I've seen it buried with the pipe. I've seen it buried 3 inches below the ground.
I've seen it under the pipe.
Right? You can't inspect every single job that gets done. The ones where we have inspectors on, we want 12 inches of separation, right? But you can't take that for granted. The other thing, whenever they locate on that, you can't locate plastic pipe. So what do you locate?
The wire.
The wire. How many times have you guys dug down looking for a gas line and the pipe be here and the damn wire on this side of the ditch, right? That's why they give you the 2 foot. Or they give me the 2 foot on each side of it, because the guy putting it in wasn't smart enough to make sure that it was with the pipe. He had it stretched out and it was on this side of the ditch and the pipe was on this side of the ditch.
Once they wrap the pipe in water, wouldn't it be easier?
They used to do that, right? And I'll show you a good example of a knee-jerk reaction. So this right here, this is a service line going down to a house. You see this wire blowed apart? You know what might have done that? Lightning strike, right? So that caused a gas leak. It showed up on this house, and I had a 12-foot flame shooting out of their front yard. So then they said, well, that's because that wire's touching that pipe. So then they went a lot of years where they would separate the wire and the pipe. They put the wire in the same depth as the tape. And again, depending on the foreman that day, you didn't know if the wire was 12 inches below the pipe or if it was 12 inches above the pipe, right? So then they started putting insulators in at the meter set, and we didn't have to do that anymore. So now they actually put the wire right with the pipe. Some foremans will wrap it around there. I used to black tape the wire to the pipe, because I wanted that locate to be as close as possible to that, because I hated hand digging, just about like anybody else. So that's out there, right? If you find the wire, you're gonna find the pipe. I get calls from excavators all the time, I found the wire, but I can't find the pipe. Well, keep digging, bud. You found the wire, you're gonna find the pipe. They just don't put wire in with no pipe, right? So that's one of the things that they did back in the day, thinking it was a safety thing, and then they figured it out. They did that for about 7 or 8 years, and then they went back to putting the wire with the pipe. So, did I answer your question about your safe excavation?
I think so. It's just the only thing I was wondering was because of, you know, you give them the amount of time and then some.
Right.
And then you're still liable when you hit something. When you called it in, they didn't show up and do their job.
Well, that's not entirely accurate, right? If they don't, if you give them the 2 full days, you go out there and there's no paint, what does that mean? Either they're late or there's no utility in the area, right? But if you're digging down, you see a gas meter right beside your house,
Yeah, and that-
or your excavation spot, then that falls back on you. As an excavator, you have to make that phone call to follow up and say, hey, why ain't this located, right?
And that's where you, and you hit on that, a lot of times we get out there, you don't see any paint, but yet there's no utilities on that side of the house.
Right.
You don't see anything. So it's like, okay, we called them 2 weeks ago, have they been here, have they not? I don't know.
Right. Yeah. You can always reach out to me, get a phone, I got business cards up here, and say, hey, Jeremy, is there any gas here at this location? Right? And I can pull it up on my maps and I can tell you. If there is, then I'll rattle the tree and get some help for you.
We've been on 2 jobs, haven't we? Absolutely. We don't know.
Now, do you guys honestly, do you walk your jobs looking for locates, right? You're digging in a basement on a corner lot, you walk your jobs to make sure?
If there's gas on the side of the house,
Yeah.
sometimes they put silkins in the tape. They had one a couple weeks ago where they had a power line on the side of the house, so it ran throughout the house and stopped right where our dig was. So I didn't dig it, I don't know where it went.
Right.
Obviously, they found out it was nothing, but I mean, it still ran, at red flags all the way to the edge of the basement. It just stops.
That's I mean, honestly, that's the safest thing you can do, right? I wish I had numbers for the electric, for the phone. AT&T has one guy that does my job for 5 states, right? So, I mean, you can imagine what kind of response you're gonna get from AT&T. But I am broke up in the Northeast Division, and I don't care if you're digging south, west, in my area, you call me, I will get you a contact. If it's not my area, I'll get you the guy that's my counterpart over there, and he doesn't wanna, every gas line that's damaged, I have to claim it as part of my damage rate. So if I can prevent it, I'm gonna do everything in my power to do it, right? Including coming out and locating the damn thing myself. So, then I better not grab hold of that locator afterwards.
If we have a locate ticket and there's no locates on our job, which obviously there's always gonna be something there.
A positive response, yep.
We dig or just say no.
No, you can't dig without a positive response.
Right.
Nope. You have,
Okay, but there's nothing, no locates there, don't they put,
Okay.
they'll put okay instead of, that's so, like, Lee was talking, there's no locates, but there's no okay, as we talked about before.
that's a positive response,
Yeah,
right?
they'll say,
And-
if there's nothing in the ground there, you don't see any paint, well, not that they didn't point out there, if there's a place occurred, a lot of times they'll write okay and circle it, that means there's nothing.
One thing I did not touch on, that not a lot of people like to talk about, is the criminal behind this part of it, right? Say you go out and you look and then you can't find that okay, and you're like, hell, I ain't gonna hit nothing. You hit a gas line, 3 people died, 4 houses burned down. They can come after you for criminal. They can come after some concrete for criminal actions too. And don't think that heads ain't gonna roll if something major happens. 99.9 times out of 100, we show up, we squeeze it off, everybody goes about their day, everybody's happy, people are pissed because they're getting a bill, right? But is it worth that one chance for you not to go home that CYA nowadays, so.
For that, for Jeff, I mean, they're usually dealing with new construction. For us, we're dealing with homes that are anywhere from 20 to 100 years old, you know what I'm saying? So we're digging up alongside a house that's been there forever.
Mm-hmm.
And everything. That's one of kind, usually we have not issues with the gas lines, usually it's the smaller utilities.
Mhm.
Because, like you said before, you know, everybody's locating their own crap, you know what I'm saying? So when you show up, there's one utility marked, I don't know if the other guys have been there or not, you know what I'm saying? And there's multiple locators showing up anymore.
USIC has a valuable tool, for excavators, it's called, Indiana Dig Check. That will save you a trip out to a job site and rolling a truck out there. You get on USIC's website, and it'll tell you if they've completed that ticket or not. They'll say yes, completed, no, not completed. And then that way you can say, well, I've got these 3 jobs for Joe Smo today, let me look. Well, shit, only one of them's been located. So you're not gonna send him to the other 2 jobs. So it's a tool for you guys to utilize, and then you can call me and say, hey, Jeremy, these other 2 jobs ain't done yet, can we get some help to get it located? Or if you've got a good enough relationship with your USIC supervisor, you can call him directly, and he'll get it done for you too. If you don't have those numbers, you can talk to me and I can get them for you. You might only have the locator's numbers, he don't want you to have the supervisor's number, right? But I've got them all if you guys want them. Any other questions?
I
Yeah.
had a couple other things too. With you guys being the gas experts, you guys know how much it dissipates in the air and stuff. Say we hit a gas line, we work in a lot of neighborhoods or, you know, close houses. What do you suggest is a good radius as to evacuate those houses? You want to evacuate the whole neighborhood? I mean,
No, see, and that's a tough question because not every situation is the same, right? If you rip an 8-inch line out, like I got in Westville, I got an 8-inch line running down the middle of a subdivision. That's gonna be a bigger area to evacuate than, a 2-inch line or a 1-inch line, right? A general good rule of thumb is each side of the property, right? And then the fire department, I don't think you can be anywhere in this county or in a metro area that you're not 10, 15 minutes away from the fire department being there, right? So as long as you knock on the door on both sides of it first, then they'll step in and they'll say, whoa, we gotta increase this radius, or they might let people back in depending on how big it is, right? There's not a definite rule of how many people you gotta do, you just gotta make an attempt to do it, right? So, I mean, 1 house, 2 houses,
Right.
that's just a judgment call.
Okay. And then another thing too, you were talking about people who put in their own lines or whatever. You said 811 won't locate that.
Nope.
Is that something that you just give the homeowner, like, hey, where'd you put this?
That part, yeah, so that's not regulated, and it can be a 20-inch line, I mean, that's great, usually they're 1-inch to half-inch line, right? But that's not regulated and that's not controlled. So that's up to the homeowner themselves to locate that line. Now, he's probably gonna push back and be like, can you find that for me? You can, but if we do that, and we go out and we hit a private line, then we're responsible for repairing it. Now, that's between your guys and your company on who's responsible for that stuff, right? But the ultimate responsibility falls back to the homeowner because it's his property, and he has to maintain it and locate it. So. Anything else? A lot of good questions, yeah.
Is witching a real thing?
If I ever catch a locator with a wire bent over looking for one of my gas lines, I would scalp him. All right? Now, that being said, yes, it is a real thing, right? But I've got a $5,000 locator in that dude's truck, and if I catch him bent up with a 13-cent flag bent over looking for my gas line, I'm gonna flip out, right? Now, the wire gets deteriorated, it gets broken, we have untonables. I've done it myself. Sometimes that's the only way you can find stuff, right? But it is the absolute last resort that I should ever see anybody ever do, which is just, you're picking up steel tile, cable, bone, electric powered, I mean, you can't go with that.
Right.
Down with that. And it could be 9 feet off. I know guys that do really good at it, and then they sit there and stomp their feet, and they say, oh, that's 3 foot deep. I'm like, you know what I mean?
My cousin said it too, a couple of years
I've done it. I'm not any good at it. Some guys are good at it, some guys aren't, but, I've never not cut any, catch anybody put the paint down on the ground and witching, right? So it's my line. It's my responsibility to locate it for you. If my locator can't locate it, he's gonna turn it back to me as untowable. If my guy can't go out and do his tricks and find it, it don't fall on you guys to find it, it's my damn pipeline. I'm gonna get a vac truck out there and I'm gonna find it for you, right? Because the law says that it's my responsibility to locate that gas line for you. So if locating that gas line is physically digging it up and finding it for you guys, because I can't find it, that's the way it is. So that's why I get very animated when people say, well, I bitched it, it's all right. That don't cover, because I'm subject to the same fines and penalties that you guys are, and I'm not gonna pay a $5,000 fine because your ass is out there witching the damn gas line, right? Just being honest with you. I mean, you got good guys and you got bad guys, right?
Yep.
I mean, not every mechanic's the same. So, any other questions? Appreciate you guys not falling asleep on me today.